All right, welcome back, dear viewers. Today I'm going to do a video on encumbrance, why it's important, and do a little comparing and contrasting of game systems and how they handle encumbrance. These systems, by the way, are OSR, D&D related systems. But before I get into that, this is what I do. I play games, I record myself playing those games, and then I talk about those games. I got nothing against the flip through review. I just feel like you don't get much out of them. I think a game and a little deep dive will help you figure out where to send your money. This hobby can get expensive. So if this is something that you like or are interested in, please hit like and subscribe, bell icon, yada, yada, and give me a follow. All right, let's get into it. So we are talking about encumbrance, the most funnest thing ever. Um, I say that tongue in cheek because people seem to really not like encumbrance. But as you can tell by the title of this video, it's necessary. You can't ignore encumbrance. I really just don't think you can. Uh, this whole thought line I've been on this week is actually comes from a Twitter conversation that I don't want to say it got heated, but it definitely got animated. It was very, there was a lot of activity around a couple threads. One that I created, but was a result or a response to this other guy who brought up how no one likes encumbrance and how can you incentivize players to engage with those rules. It just as a quick aside, got nothing against the guy. I follow him. He's got great takes. I like getting into a little back and forth with him every now and again. But it got me thinking about this, and I really felt like he had a conceptual problem with the way he posed the issue, because he wanted to give bonuses for smart encumbrance use, and I'm like, I don't think I just think there's a conceptual issue there. So, but that's a fact. It's just a fact. No one likes encumbrance. I don't know anybody who likes encumbrance, but it's boring. People don't like the math. It's quote. It's not fun. And I remember back in the day when I first started playing Beckme, the red box, we would have sheets and sheets and sheets of just all the gear we were carrying: magic swords, spears, shields, armor. It was like this comically huge backpack, because but we were playing the game wrong, and by the end of this video, I think you'll understand why. At least I hope you do. But we were playing the game wrong, and we were missing out. So the framing of the issue of like how to incentivize players to make it fun, I think completely misunderstands what encumbrance is about. It is not a rule that is supposed to engender a fun, like a critical hit rule, like, oh yeah, I cut off the guy's head or whatever, or some really cool combat subsystem that allow specialists to do a certain thing a certain way. It is a rule that is necessary for immersion. It is not there to be fun for the players. It is there to provide an environment, a simulation where the fun occurs. To me, and I could be wrong here, but I don't think I am, immersion requires a verisimilitude with the real world, so the players have something to relate to when engaging with the fantasy. It's kind of grounding. I like the idea of like 1 foot in the real, 1 foot in the fantasy, and that kind of gives the players like this kind of buoyancy. Allows them to make some assumptions about what's happening in the game world, and which, if done right, it avoids the mother may I. Like, oh, can I do this? Can I do this? I want to do. Can I climb this? Can I? It's like, yeah, you can climb it. You don't need to ask. But if you have that verisimilitude with the real world, you should be able to avoid a lot of the mother may I, and your players will feel confident as their characters are going through the world, engaging with it, and eventually hit immersion, right? And that's all based on these assumptions that we're making. These are the same kind of assumptions we make in our everyday lives. When you wake up in the morning, you're not thinking about whether the sun is going to rise. You just know it is. You just know that there's these the world, there's these laws that help our reality function the way it functions, and that you just keep going doing what you're doing. You're not thinking about gravity. You're not thinking about cause and effect. You're not thinking about these fundamental things. Philosophers do that. they're broke because you don't make money as a philosopher. Um, but but yeah, that's the same thing with the simulated world that your characters are playing in. Excuse me, your players are playing in. And encumbrance is one of those fundamental laws of the universe that allows for the simulation to work. If the simulation works, then you have this environment where the fun can happen. And what is the fun? What is the goal? Immersion. As Venture Satanist likes to say, the goal is immersion. And when you're immersed in this simulated world that's functioning the way it's supposed to function, um, you're going to have fun because your character's going to do stuff in reaction to the fundamental laws of that simulation. So, encumbrance is fundamental um, because there's only so much your character can carry. That sounds kind of trivial or obvious, but this simple truth carries with it the weight of consequence, pun intended. Um, it creates a decision point for your character when they find the chest of gold or they need to carry a comrade out of danger. It creates decision points for your character when they're deciding what to bring on an adventure. You're going into the Temple of Elemental Evil. What are you going to bring? Versus going into a swamp lair of a hag or something. What are you going to bring? What do you think you need? And I like those cost benefit analyses that the players have to make when doing this sort of thing. And players are going to gripe. They will gripe about this sort of things. That no one likes encumbrance. But when you start seeing the gears turning in their mind when they're as encumbrance is posing an issue for them, these decision points, that's when they're immersed. That's when they're starting to really engage with the world, be immersed, and have to make these decisions. Another great example is like the fighter who's got plate mail, shield, two-handed sword, a lot of heavy gear, and then they find this huge chest of gold. It's got like maybe 2,000 gold pieces in it. That's going to weigh a lot. The fighter's strong enough to carry it, but he's moving like maybe 10 feet around, right? But that, if you're playing like an old school game, that 2,000 gold also represents 2,000 XP, right? So it's very, very valuable to that fighter. Well, he could carry it all out, moving 10 feet a turn, right? Or whatever it would be, which means it's going to take more time to get out of the dungeon, which means there's a higher chance or an increased chance of encountering more monsters. So this all of a sudden becomes a very dangerous enterprise. Do they leave some of the treasure there? Do they shed some of the weight that they're carrying so they can move a little faster with the treasure? I was in my Lamentation of Elemental Evil game. They found a ton of gold, and they knew they couldn't carry it all out. And they were also kind of gaming the system a little bit, but they buried half of it, and then they went back to town, cashed it in, got their XP, but the whole time they're biting their nails because time's passing, and they're afraid about monsters or rival bandits or something coming to take the treasure that they buried. So, but that created a cool emergent story situation where they were really hustling to get out, and on the way back, they ended up getting into a rainstorm and some flooding of the valley that they were in, and then the Cyclops came out, and they're like, "Oh man, we're gonna die trying to get the other half of this gold." It was fun. They survived barely, but it made for a really great series of encounters, all centered around this gold that they found. And in Lamentations, gold is very, very valuable. That wouldn't have happened if I hand waved the encumbrance rules. That wouldn't have happened, and they would have missed out on some fun. So yeah, the original tweet that started all this asked about incentivizing players, and again, I don't think making encumbrance more fun is the solution. Giving them some bonuses for playing by the rules of the simulation is, in my opinion, a recipe for disaster. You're just going to spoil your players. You're just going to. They're going to expect more and more and more, all for just following the rules. I think the better solution through a proper conceptual understanding of what encumbrance is as a slot-based system. Make it more user-friendly as opposed to bonuses and fun. Um, let's do a little comparison and contrasting, shall we? So, just the three systems that I've seen predominantly are something from like AD&D, where it's like standard measurements and weights, especially in second edition. I remember that's what I played mostly in the 90s. I'm very sympathetic to gamers who don't like this. I didn't like it. I think there is an argument to be made that should be a balancing act between what's necessary for the simulation and what's just fun to play, the game side of it. You know, the simulation is for the role playing, but then you have this game because it's an RPG, right? So I don't fault anyone for saying I don't want to keep track of ounces and pounds and all that stuff. The BX line of cases use a coin system where it's just a basic number and that's attached to every item, and then you just add it up and compare it to a chart. And if you breach a threshold, you're more encumbered, so you're moving slower. I like this a lot. I think it works. It's just basic math. It's not really that hard to calculate. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think plate mail is like 400 coins or something like that, right? So plate mail's 400 coins. I think shield's 100, and then you got your sword might be another 25 or 50 coins, and you just add that up and then look at a chart. You know, then you got your backpack, whatever's in there. You add that up. You know, look at a chart. My only real criticism on this, sort of feel like it's counterintuitive. You know, we don't think in terms in like the real world. We don't think in terms of how many coins something weighs, right? And I think that counterintuitiveness sort of works against the simulation a little bit, because now you gotta stop what you're doing and do a little quick math. I don't mind the system, but I do think if you're like really trying to get into the headspace and have that immersive experience, this might be not for you. Enter the slot-based system. So the slot-based system, I think, is really easy. It doesn't interfere with immersion at all. I think anybody who complains about this, I'm wondering exactly what you're complaining about. Shadow Dark and Lamentations of the Flame Princess both use a slot-based system. Someone mentioned RuneQuest has been doing it since the 70s. I never played RuneQuest, so I don't know. But hey, that's awesome. I'm glad slot-based systems have been around for a while. That's great. But basically, is like for Shadow Dark, for example, it's really easy. It's like you have 10 plus your strength bonus in slots before of gear you can carry before you're encumbered, and everything just takes up a slot, with a few exceptions. And then when you're encumbered, you're moving slower, and are unable to do certain things. I like Lamentations of the Flame Princess slot system more because it's more robust. It's not just how many slots and gear. Like on a one-for-one basis. There's 3 categories of items. You have non-encumbering items, normal items, and then oversized items. Non-encumbering items don't go into a slot. They're just on a separate section of your character sheet. Unless you're carrying a lot of them, they're not going to take up a slot. Oversized items you don't put in a slot either, but they automatically count against you as a point of encumbrance. So for every 5 slots that get filled, you have a point of encumbrance, and then you tally up your points of encumbrance, check a chart, and that's how fast you're moving, how encumbered you are. I like that more. I sort of feel like that bridges the gap between something really simple like Shadow Dark and something a little bit that tries to approximate reality like a coin-based system. I really think Lamentations way of tracking encumbrance is just perfect. I like it a lot. So, but there you have it. I mean, like, that's it. I don't see why this is hard. I don't see why it's complicated, and I really don't see why it's not fun. In the sense that it's not going to ruin. It's not going to ruin your game. It's not going to ruin your experience at all. If anything, it's going to enhance it, as it's part of the simulation, and the simulation is necessary for immersion. So, but anyway, folks, that is all I have. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.